Now, let me just come to my last point, part 5. How do we prevent the worst case scenarios? And my simple answer here, and I'm going to end because I'm approaching my 40-minute time limit now, is that I think it's important for the ASEAN countries and the other East Asian countries to speak out. And I say this because the trouble with we Asians is that we are too quiet. We are too nice. We don't say what we really think. And I would say I especially blame, I don't know whether this is politically correct, I blame the Javanese. The Javanese are never very direct. The Javanese always try to say things very subtly, very carefully. But if you are too subtle, Americans don't understand you. So I think it's time for the Javanese to be more direct and speak more openly and tell both US and China the same thing. Don't make us choose. We want to be friends. We want to be friends with America. We want to be friends with China. And we also need to say something else, very important. One other important message we want to tell both United States and China is that right now we have more important things to deal with. We have to deal, for example, with COVID-19, right? And I'm very sorry to hear that COVID-19 has come back again in Indonesia, that you have a shutdown, we have to meet virtually. I cannot go to Indonesia to see you all because of COVID-19. So why don't we press the pause button on the US-China geopolitical contest so that all of us, US, China, and everybody else, let's work together to kill COVID-19. That should be the priority. We shouldn't be fighting each other. We should be supporting each other in the fight against COVID-19. And because there's no cooperation, other countries are suffering from more COVID-19. And here, I want to emphasize that one image I have used, one message that we can all give together to the US and China in simple terms. Sometimes it's best to give the message very simply. And I use a very simple boat metaphor to explain how the world has changed. So I say that in the past, when 7.8 billion people live in 193 separate countries, right? It was as though they were living in 193 separate boats, right? And when you live in a separate boat, by the way, it doesn't matter if one boat catches COVID-19 because COVID-19 cannot fly. So it won't hit the other boat. So the other boat is safe, right? And if we were all in separate boats, like in the past, COVID-19 wouldn't affect us. But what's happened is that because the world has shrunk, because of globalization, we live in a very small, interdependent, interconnected space. And so the 7.8 billion people no longer live in 193 separate boats. The 7.8 billion people live in 193 separate cabins on the same boat. And we know we are on the same boat because when one cabin got COVID-19, all 193 cabins got COVID-19. We are in the same boat. Now, as you know, if all of you have been on a boat, now assuming you're on a boat on a cruise liner, and let's say one of the cabins catches fire, what's the first thing you do? The first thing you do is put out the fire. But when COVID-19 broke out, the United States, instead of cooperating with China to put out the fire, United States said, who started this fire? Let's find out who started it. Now, that's the stupidest thing to do. Now, if you're in a different boat, you can argue who started the fire. But if you're on the same boat, put out the fire first. And similarly, on climate change, also, we need to cooperate on climate change. So the message that we should all send, and I hope all young Indonesians will send also to both United States and China, the common message should be, we have more important things to deal with today, like COVID-19, like climate change. So let's stop this contest for a while, press the pause button, and let's carry on. So I hope that you will join me in conveying this message to the United States and China. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to respond to your questions. Let me just add an important point here. Please think of the most difficult questions. Because if the question is easy, it's very hard to answer. If the question is difficult, it's very easy to answer. Thank you.